Welcome back to episode two of Lawsuits and Lessons. You know, we have a great show today. I want to bring on the host, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. John Fagerholm. How you doing, John?
Good to see you. It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get back. You know, I really liked the first episode, and I think the listeners and the viewers learned a lot about you, and that's important because if we're going to do this show, people need to know your legal expertise and your legal brain and your entrepreneurship, which is so important because I know moving forward, you know, you're going to have a lot of your friends on who are guests, are entrepreneurs who have sharp minds like yours and who also have probably, I'm guessing, have ran into some of the legal issues that you know how to take care of.
Well, most of the friends that I'm going to bring on are business owners out of California. So they've certainly run into legal problems because that's just the landscape in California. I'll try to bring on people that I'm familiar with, but at some point I'll be asking people to come on that maybe I'm not as familiar with.
That's good because, you know, I know people, especially business owners and a lot of entrepreneurs, they like to talk. I mean, it's just like entertainers. You know, you try to get it, and we just like to talk. It's your mind. And I think with entrepreneurs, I think entrepreneurs are very much like entertainers. I think, you know, a lot of time they have to run their businesses somewhat the same because a comedian or a musician, they're running a business where people don't believe that all the time. But, you know, they have to worry about getting the gig, selling the merch. And I think that's why I think they have a big correlation and they have a big camaraderie with entrepreneurs.
Well, like I always say, everything is sales, right? Entrepreneurs sell products or services and employees sell labor. You know, that's just the name of the game.
Our guest today, just tell me how you know him. I know he's been in the movie business. He's been in the restaurant business. He's been, you know, has another business going in the fitness business, I guess. The guy wears very many hats, and I think it shows his brain, how sharp it is, because he moves and progresses to what is probably what interests him and which he knows he can generate the most love. But tell us a little about the guest today, and his name's Marvin Acuna. Tell us a little about Marvin and, you know, how you know him and some of his background.
Well, Marvin and I go way back, and way back meaning the mid 2000s, I would say. Great guy. I met him when he was managing a client of mine that I was doing legal work for. And over the years, we've just had a really great synergy. He's helped me when I've needed it. I've helped him when he's needed it. He's one of these guys that is always on the cutting edge. We're doing a few things together now also. And what's interesting about the past stuff he's done and also what we're doing together is that it's all the stuff that I'm interested in that in my friend group, most other people are not interested in. So I know that Marvin's always on the cutting edge of everything. So I was told by somebody, even if you don't know a lot about AI, be the person in your friend group that knows the most about AI, right? That was the advice I got when I was trying to figure this AI thing out. And then I tried to be that guy, but then Marvin comes along and he knows a lot more about it than I do. And so we're working on some projects together because now he has a bit of an expertise in that world. Just a great all-around guy. We had so many great adventures together when we were both single guys in LA, you know, doing the Hollywood scene. A lot of great stories. We probably won't bring any of those up here, but maybe our After Dark episodes if we ever get to that. But anyway, let me introduce Marvin. Marvin, if you wouldn't mind coming on, and then let's talk.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Congratulations on the podcast as well.
Yeah, so Marvin, you know, it's good to meet you. You know, we talked a little before, and John said a lot. What is it you do right now? What is your company? That's MoBal, right? MoBal?
So it's MoBal, exactly. It's a consulting company, and it focuses on really the idea that as business leaders, as business executives, we really need to have a real command and mastery of our own bodies. And from that point of view, I'm really referring to not just the physical body, but the inner body. And part of that really is about becoming disciplined, relentless in your discipline. And one of those things that has really been powerful for me is meditation, prayer, and of course, physical fitness. And I think that when you have the discipline to work out on a daily basis and really have a command of the mastery of how you feel, that physical stress, by putting your own body into a stressful situation, you really get the opportunity to remain calm in stressful situations when it comes to business. And obviously, as John mentioned, something that always drives me about business is things that are interesting to me and things that I'm passionate about. And two things that to me are very interesting are really being strategic. And one of the things that has allowed me to really develop that is AI. AI has become a tremendous leverage, a tremendous lever, and using the tools to leverage your own time and obviously, as I would like to call it, optimize your workflow. It really makes a huge difference. So in essence, I like to say that I help entrepreneurs transform their discipline from a business that is really a job into a business that they can scale and scale along with it. So that's what I'm doing right now.
You have an extensive film credit, or you have a lot of film credits for films that you've done. But let's talk about that a little bit, because that's always really interesting to people, whether they live in California or outside of it. And that's when we first met, when you were managing and producing. So what was your favorite project that you worked on?
It's funny. I did get an opportunity to make a lot of films and work with a lot of really wonderful talent. But I have to say that the first one that I worked on, which funny enough was just a 20-minute short film. And it was my favorite because, of course, it was my first. And second of all, I remember standing on this street. I think it may have been somewhere along Western, and much of that section of town has a little bit of a New York feel to it. And I'm standing on the street and I'm observing the fact that we have all these cameras and all these lights being set up. And the cinematographer comes over to me and he says, "Hey, man, where are the walkie-talkies?" and I'm thinking, what do you mean? He goes, "Well, we're trying to set up all these lights. How the hell are we going to communicate from the different buildings?" And I said, "No one ordered the walkie-talkies?" And he says, "Well, it's not my responsibility." And I remember in that moment, I was just so happy that I was shooting this little film. When they shot Lawrence of Arabia, they didn't have walkie-talkies then. What did they do? And he goes, "They use hand signals." I said, "Well, there you go. That's the solution." So that was one of my favorite, probably, and remains my favorite project.
I have a question regarding that, because as you said, you become this entrepreneur. We mentioned entrepreneur a few times. When you started in the film business and you had success, it's not like you're a guy who just did a few YouTube movies. You produced stuff, you managed stuff, you had success. In any other time, did you think that you would end up venturing into other side businesses? Because, people get so blinded by Hollywood, but then after a while, they notice it can be a shitty life. I mean, it's not like all roses like people think. But when did you sit there? Did you start getting tired, or what happened that made you gravitate into this career that now you've done a bunch of the other successful things?
The reality is I created a television series for Bravo. And the Bravo was it was a reality show. And we had a series of individuals or contestants, if you will. And a friend of mine had said, "Would you be interested in meeting my sister?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to meet your sister." I said, "Obviously, she would have to go through any process and protocols that the company has in place, but would love to meet her." Now, unbeknownst to me, she'd already auditioned for the show and did not make it all the way to the selection process. But I decided to take the meeting with her anyways. And it just turned out that we had such a deep connection that I decided to take a life hiatus. And we decided to travel around the world, something I hadn't really done because, as I'm sure you both know, when you make a commitment to work in a business that you have to start from literally the janitor level, it takes every ounce of time and energy and resources. And so here I was, I just had the show and I'd met this young lady and I decided let's venture off. And so we did. And I was just basically putting a pause in my entertainment life in that moment. And she became unwell and I decided that I would use some of the skills that I developed from film and television. And, a lot of people don't realize that film and television, I mean, it's called the entertainment business. And at the end of the day, it really is a business. And if you're going to succeed at it, you got to treat it that way. And all of those skill sets that you develop while you're putting a project together, those can be transferable to just about anything. And as a result, I was able to help her build her business. And then that just kind of really led me to really sit and be with my thoughts. And then my father passed away. And when he passed away, I realized I hadn't shared a slice of pizza with him in about 7 years. And those were all my memories. And as a result of that, I decided to launch a pizza company in honor of him. So the answer is, I took a break from the business, did not realize it was going to be, and then just realized that I could transfer all these incredible skills and apply them to any business that I so desired to build.
And on that topic, because I know a little bit about you, Marvin, or a lot about you, the great thing about being an entrepreneur and being a problem solver. So Marvin wanted to travel around the world with this girl, but that still costs money. What Marvin didn't mention is that he had built an internet business that was paying for all of that anyway. So tell us about that internet business.
So when I arrived in Los Angeles, I didn't know a single human being related to the entertainment industry at all. I mean, I just came to Los Angeles. I was trying to figure my way around, and within a year, I made my first feature film. And then shortly thereafter, I started evolving in the business. I ended up working for a woman with a deal at Warner Brothers. I was her development executive. Then I transitioned into management and representation. And the next thing I know, I'm making films. And the next thing I know, I'm packaging them. And the next thing I know, I'm creating them. And I realized that if a kid born in Guatemala, grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, and then made it to Los Angeles and then was working with Tom Hanks and John Malkovich, that there had to be a skill set that I could transfer to other people. And so as a result, I would call it the early version of Masterclass. I built this internet business and where I brought in guest speakers from all parts of the industry, agents, executives, managers, successful writers, successful producers. And I built a subscription model, and that subscription model generated the necessary revenue to comfortably travel around the world.
And what's great about Marvin, one of the things I like about him, and my wife also has a friend very similar to what I'm about to say about you, Marvin, is I loved traveling with Marvin because I never had to do anything. We always had a schedule, an agenda, the tickets were booked. I basically just had to show up and say, okay, what's next? Yeah. And just be up for whatever it was. It was wonderful. I love traveling with you.
That is a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite things to do, is really put a plan together that we can thoroughly enjoy and not have to think about.
That sort of correlates to running your own business. You're doing all the planning. So when you go with John, or when you travel with your friends or, whoever, you're planning everything from the get-go, because it seems like that's what you like to do. Now, what I want to know is what was the pizza? Because I love pizza. Moving back, John always gave me a hard time because I grew up 10 minutes from Philadelphia in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And I say I'm from Philly because in LA, when you say you're from New Jersey, they go, what exit? They say something stupid. And I remember one night I get a message on my phone and it's John. And he has these two girls going, we're from King of Prussia. And I'm thinking Cherry Hill, New Jersey is closer to Philadelphia than King of Prussia. So shut up. But pizza, moving back here, the pizza is great. But what made you decide to, what was your pizza business all about? Because I think, was it vegan or what was it?
As I mentioned, I met a woman. We were traveling. She became unwell. I'm a voracious reader. And when she became unwell, I decided to figure out how I could help her become better. And I read, countless materials on just health in general. And what I found was that the common ground was plant-based. I didn't care what kind of nutritionist you were, what kind of doctor you were. Everyone had a common ground. Now, some of them were all plant-based, some of them were majority plant-based. But in the end, I realized that plant-based was the kind of theme throughout every particular person that I read about or learned from. And so I became plant-based. And when I became plant-based, I stopped eating pizza because in general, at that time, you really couldn't find a quality product that was made with plants. And so my father passed away. And when he passed away, all of these childhood memories were centered around having pizza with him. But because I'd gone plant-based, I stopped eating pizza. And I was really haunted by that memory. And as a result, I was just challenging the lifestyle decision I had made. And then I heard his voice. I was running on a treadmill and I heard his voice, and his voice said, if a pizza you'd eat doesn't exist, go make one. And I just thought, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. I've never worked in a restaurant or a pizza shop, but it was such a powerful, powerful feeling that it really gave me a moment to think about, well, actually, business is about solving problems. And I realized that I had a problem. There wasn't pizza that I could actually consume that aligned with my nutritional values. And I decided that I would put one together that would align with my values. And that's how the pizza business got started. So it was a 100% plant-based pizza that eventually made its way into Whole Foods and so on.
I do remember one of the businesses you had was taking celebrity chefs and doing these amazing events where people would come in. And remind me what it was again, but describe it. I remember I attended a few times and it was fantastic, but I don't quite remember all of the details of it.
Again, this is, we're going back 15 years ago. And it dawned on me that chefs had become these new comedians, right? Because all of a sudden you had all these reality television shows and you could literally say the chef from Top Chef or the chef from the Food Network series. And I approached a restaurant owner that I knew and I suggested to him that we create what's called the LA Dinner Club. And the LA Dinner Club was the idea that I would go into a restaurant on a Monday night, which is generally the slow night for most restaurants. And we would bring in a celebrity chef. And through my own network of relationships, I would pack the house. And so we would sell out every other Monday by bringing a celebrity chef in to create their new concept or reinvent a dish that had been on the menu. I'm a foodie. I just, hands down, there's nothing more I love than learning about food, reading about food, watching shows about food. So I thought, let me create something that I can fully engage in and fully experience. And that was LA Dinner.
Yeah, that's awesome. And this is a law show. So let's get into the legal aspects of this. Every entrepreneur, every business owner, at some point, there's a lawsuit. Any particular lawsuits that you can talk about, want to talk about, or you avoided, anything that relates to potentially being sued or being sued?
Orson Welles made a feature film based on the Confidential report. And I believe the character's name was Mr. Arkadin. And in it, he gives this brief monologue. And the monologue is about him telling a story about a frog and a scorpion. And the scorpion asks the frog to cross him over the river. And the frog's like, no way, absolutely not. And the scorpion says, why not? He says, well, because you're going to sting me. The scorpion says, well, that wouldn't make any logical sense because if I sting you, I would die as well. And the frog thinking to himself, well, that does make logical sense. So he allows the scorpion to get on his back and they start flowing through the river. And of course, as fate would have it, the scorpion stings the frog and the frog's legs get frozen. And as he's kind of drowning, he says, why would you do that? He said, now we're both going to die. And the scorpion responds, because it's my nature. It's because it's my character. And I would say that in my life, what I realized is that people show you who they are. They reveal to you who they are. And if you disregard that or if you ignore that, you find yourself in situations where you're stung by the scorpion. It's a marriage, right? If you're going to build a business with someone, it is really a marriage. And unless you've identified the roles and unless you've been very clear and very specific, you can find yourself in situations. And while I won't go into the specifics of the project, I was involved in a project that was sold to a major studio. And prior to its selling, we had a pitch meeting at the networks. And I had to be out of town because I had another film that was debuting and premiering at a different film festival. And in order to travel back for the meeting, it would have cost us a significant amount of money. So I said, well, listen, we're partners. Take the meeting without me, and let's just, the content, let's make it happen. And sure enough, he did. And sure enough, we sold it. And the next thing I know, he's telling me that he's made a great deal for me. And I'm a little shocked at this because I'm represented. I have my own lawyers, my own agents, and I'm thinking, they haven't made a deal for me. How is it possible that you made a deal for me? But in the moment, I was so excited and so thrilled. I said, look, let's not argue at the moment. Let's just have a nice moment and celebrate. And it turned out that in the meeting and through the negotiations, they had attempted to circumvent me. And the reality of the situation is that over the course of our professional life, I had observed and I had witnessed him behave in a way that was, lacked honor. But, in that moment, I'm thinking, well, that's not me. So he's not doing that to me. And unfortunately, it turned around that he did exactly what I had observed him and witnessing doing to me. And so we had gotten into a situation in which they were trying to force me to sign on the dotted line and transfer my rights for the deal they had struck. So I had to basically engage a litigation law firm to threaten to, of course, file a lawsuit not only against him, but the individuals that moved forward with the transaction, and also including the network and the studio. And I made it abundantly clear to them that I was not going to agree to the conditions and terms because I owned the show and I had a copyright, and this was copyright infringement. And sure enough, once the lawyer issued the letters, within 4 hours, everyone behaved and acted as if there was a complete misunderstanding. And I ended up getting exactly what I had originally asked for, and more importantly, what I earned and had deserved. So it was a really ugly situation because rather than enjoying the success of this show and the success of this sale and the fruits of this work, we found ourselves entangled in this legalese situation. And then that really just frankly muddied the waters. And I think as a result of it, we weren't a unified entity. And because we weren't unified, we couldn't really communicate our vision clearly, because now it was two different people vying for, quote unquote, the credit of whose idea this originally was. And I think the show really suffered for that. And ultimately, I believe it wasn't renewed, and it didn't have the soul and the heart that it would have if we had not involved ourselves in an ugly, useless, truly, and fruitless battle.
It's funny. John had talked about some different legal issues, some business issues last week about the landlord and sexual harassment and all that. But let me ask you, because this says you were not the lawyer in the case. Do you feel a sense of betrayal when something like that happens? Because it's like, I'm wondering if in these cases there's a guy who owns a restaurant, or in your case, you're the show, or someone gives him a job and then they bring this lawsuit. It may not be right, it may be wrong. Do people feel, maybe it was against you, do people feel betrayal? Like, did you feel betrayed by this guy? And John, do you ever get clients of yours that feel betrayed when a lawsuit comes up?
The answer is 100%. It's 100% a deep sense of betrayal. It's 100% a deep sense of challenging your own values. And honestly, there's a big part of you that goes, how did I miss this? Right? I mean, back to the idea of relationships, and I use this in a general statement, but you go on a date with a girl who you can sense is a little crazy, but you kind of overlook that because she's so beautiful. And then you go out on your second and third date and you realize, no, this girl is really crazy, but she's so beautiful. You're like, I've got to be with this human being. And that's the case here, right? Every indication was that this person was not someone that was honorable. And I overlooked that over and over and over again, and then got myself into business with him. So yes, I had a deep sense of betrayal, but it's also something you have to look at the mirror and say, geez, who am I? And where am I off in my own value system that I would even allow myself to be in business with someone that could do this to me? So the answer is yes, betrayal, but there's also the reality that you have to accept responsibility for the fact that those decisions and those choices you initially made. So that would be my take on the situation.
Ultimate accountability. I love it. That's what true business owners, if you can take accountability, if you can see that every decision you make has some sort of repercussion, whether it's positive or negative, that's the best way to operate a business, in my opinion. But with what you were asking, Steve, yes, I have so many stories from clients that said, hey, I lent this guy money. I did this. His mom was sick. Whatever, the long litany of nice things they did for certain people. Right. And, what I always say is, look, charity is wonderful, do charity, but don't do it in your business because, there's many reasons for lawsuits, sexual harassment, wage and hour stuff, whatever. But a large part of cases where there doesn't seem to be something there, or it's very small. Hey, I worked this overtime and I didn't get paid for it. It's usually one of two things. It's usually because the employee was not treated well. Hey, this supervisor always yells at me. This supervisor lets them get away with it, doesn't let me get away with it. Or a lot of times it's something you're giving them that they're not entitled to. And then when you take it away, they get upset about it, right? Hey, I don't want you smoking outside of your lunch breaks and your 10-minute breaks anymore. Don't just go outside and smoke whenever you think you need a smoke because you've got work to do. Well, I've always been able to do it. I've worked here 10 years. No one's ever said anything. Well, we're changing that practice now. Suddenly you get a lawsuit about something completely different. Betrayal, yes. But at the end of the day, it's business and you got to make business decisions and you've got to be accountable for who you hire. It's much easier to hire a good person than it is to fire a bad person, right? So take your time. And I know a lot of times you just need to get bodies in the door, but I always say that's one of the biggest mistakes you'll make.
Okay, well, since we're on the topic of business and law, we had talked earlier, as you know, Charlie Kirk was assassinated a few weeks ago, and a lot of people were writing a lot of stuff on the internet, okay, celebrating his death. Some were, canonizing him, both different ways. But then I saw that people were doxing people who said something bad and sending it to their employee and saying, we're going to fire this person, we're going to fire. So John, what is the legal aspect of that? Like, I know we all talk about freedom of speech and, stuff like that. Me being a performer, I believe in it. I also feel like if you say something awful on stage and the crowd turns on you, they have every right to, because, you're just, a lot of times just trying to be edgy. But with like the situation, because in Charlie Kirk, which leads to Jimmy Kimmel, both had very, very much in the news. There's nothing to gain from it. With your legal advice, and also Marvin, because you've been in the entertainment world and you own businesses, how does an employer, if he fired someone because they celebrated it, does that person have recourse, and what's the employer do? Because I want to know, because this isn't like a TV show on the left and a TV show on the right. This is right in the middle. How would you handle it? What would you tell someone an employer who came to you said, I fired this guy, now they want to sue me?
This is a very broad question, right? Because we're talking about First Amendment, and I'm not a constitutional attorney anyway, but yes, there are there are companies that I've represented where someone said they're going to sue them because of this right or that right, or whatever else. But what people don't realize, because I guess in schools, we just don't teach the Constitution. In fact, I knew broadly about the Constitution, but it wasn't until law school that I actually read the Constitution and studied the Constitution. What people don't understand about the First Amendment is that the First Amendment is protections from the government, not protections from private entities. So in general, under California law, your employer can terminate you for any reason or no reason, just not a protected reason. And the protected reasons are race, gender, sexual identity, origin, the basic ones. And there's a few nuances in that. For example, there's certain political speech that you're allowed to say it, speech related to organizing, under the NLRB, that's protected. But for the most part, if you make your employer look bad, they have every right to sue you. It's a private company. So think of it like this. If somebody comes into my house, an invited guest, right? Employees are not guests per se, but I'm just using this as an analogy. Sure, they can say whatever they want, but I have the right to say, hey, leave my house, right? And just because there's a thing called the First Amendment doesn't necessarily mean that they have some cause of action against me from me kicking them out of the house. In fact, I can kick them out of my house for no reason, right? Just like, you know what? I'm tired, leave, right? So same thing. The First Amendment is protection from the government. So the government can't take negative action against you for anything you say, for anything, for your religious beliefs, for organizing, so that's what people don't understand. They think, well, I have freedom of speech. Yeah, but you do, but it still has consequences, just not consequences from the government, right? So I'm not saying it's legal for people to dox you and all that stuff, but certainly if, in the Jimmy Kimmel situation, if there's enough backlash, well, this company is in the business of making money. That network makes money from advertisers. That show makes money from that advertisers. And so if he harms that in any way, why wouldn't they fire him? Right? That's number one. Number two, maybe it's just a pretext. I mean, I've been hearing for a few years now that not only Jimmy Kimmel, but lots of these shows aren't making money; they're losing money. So maybe it's just a pretext anyway. A reason to fire him. And I haven't kept up with this. I don't know if he got his show back or if it's permanent or whatever it is. But he doesn't have First Amendment protections against the network that's decided to fire him.
For this one, they said it was because the FCC got involved. But Kimmel did know that was something. That's what the people were about Kimmel. It wasn't about free speech. It was about the FCC that shouldn't be getting involved. That's what I heard.
So I did hear that too. And I heard, I don't know who the FCC commissioner is at this point. I don't remember his name, but I think he made threats. Yes, you are protected from that because the government shouldn't be putting pressure on the network to fire Jimmy Kimmel. But the interesting thing about that is the same people that are crying about that now, and I say crying just, as a general term, not to disparage them, but where were they when people were getting kicked off of YouTube and Twitter and all of these places because of speech that they didn't like, that their side didn't like? I don't think people can analyze, right? They don't seem to go, oh, wait, that's exactly what was happening to these people, but we didn't say anything then,
I think people can analyze, but I think what happens is we live in a time where only, as my mom would call it, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So it's always you only hear the hardest left or the hardest right. When the people in the middle, like us, we can have a conversation. No one hears that. And that's what gets me pissed off. No one hears that. Which, by the way, though, Kimmel did come back, and his opening monologue has 19 million views on YouTube. And it was his second highest rated show. He had 6 million viewers. So that's hysterical. Like, I mean, and the other thing is you can bet out with Hulu, because people canceled Hulu, but now they did a price change. So you canceled it $9.99 a month and you renew it, and it's $12.99 a month. So Hulu made money, Kimmel made money, everyone's making money.
The American way, right? The American way. But I disagree with you, Steve, about analysis. Analysis, that's not where people go. They go from who they want to listen to some conclusion and don't do the math in between anymore. And I know you're saying it's the extremes. Yeah, that's just the worst of it. Even law students now, I used to do a lot with my law school, and now I just don't do it anymore. But I started noticing over the years, like, wait a minute, like something's happening here where they're not learning to put the pieces together to figure it out. They're coming to a conclusion before they even investigate anything. And, what's interesting is what you were saying about extreme views or whatever. So when I do my YouTube videos, most of it is just commentary about how bad business is in California or how bad the laws are in California. But some of the comments I go, wow, I don't even know if they're watching the same video that I did. I did one recently, and it was basically just reporting that Bed Bath and Beyond is in bankruptcy, but is reorganizing and opening up in several states, but they're not going to open up in California. And the CEO says they're not opening up in California because of the employment laws, the regulation, and just how tough it is to do business in general in California. The comments were crazy. It was like, so you want slave labor? You're a Nazi. And I'm like, what? What does any of this have to do with what I just said? And it just, and all my videos are like that. The people that commented, I go, this has got to be a joke, right? They didn't look at the video and analyze it. They just go, oh, this guy represents businesses evil.
I hope they reopen because I have like a stack of those 20% off coupons, man. I kept them just in case there's Bed Bath & Beyond. I got a whole stack and I'm ready to use those. So when Bed Bath & Beyond opens again, I'm ready. All my friends, man, you all get 20% off. You get 20% off. You get 20% off. You get 20% off. Everybody gets 20% off.
I thought Overstock.com bought the name Bed Bath & Beyond. So is it Overstock?
It was an interview I saw with the CEO. And I saw that they were reorganizing. So I don't remember those details, but it just struck me that they're willing to reopen, but not in California. And that's what I'm saying. Like, hey, this doesn't make sense because if you want a good economy, you have to allow those that create, because they also create opportunities for other people. Right. And so if you're always pushing against them, you're pushing them out. The one thing that entrepreneurs have and businesses have usually is choice, right? And they're not choosing California. And they're all saying the same thing. And all my clients, those that can move. I'm barred in Texas. And the reason I got my bar in Texas is I did that about 10 years ago. It's because a lot of my clients were moving to Texas. And guess what? Texas is the number one place to do business in America.
Obviously, as an individual who was hiring the employees to work at a pizza shop, on the one level, you want to make sure everyone's getting paid very well. You obviously want to make sure they're cared for, they're making a nice living and able to take care of themselves. But on the other hand, the same people who are out there arguing for higher wages, when it comes time to add those wages into the calculation of cost of goods, those very people are the people that then start crying, for lack of a better word choice, for the prices you charge. Listen, it's a really tricky situation because I remember that I would have employees that would come to me and they would literally say, I need a raise. Then I would say, okay, for this raise, what other responsibilities are you agreeing to take on? Oh, no, I'm going to do the same job. But the thing is, Taco Bell is now offering me $25 an hour, and you're only offering, $20 an hour. At that point, you begin, really, I can't afford, I'm not Taco Bell. So there's no possibility. And it's, obviously it's a really tricky situation because, I want to pay these people $25 an hour. But at the same time, I don't have menu items that are $3.99. I don't have the scale to buy the quantity of product to reduce my cost to 99 cents. So it's, California does make it very tricky. And, in part, it's one of the reasons, particularly the reason why it is challenging to open a business in Los Angeles, California specifically, and do the right thing by paying people a good wage, because it's hard to then collect that from the people who are out there protesting that you should pay a good wage.
Give some advice for someone who wants to be an entrepreneur. Your guy's been successful in a few different fields, and John, you too. Give some advice. What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur? If they're listening right now and they go, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, what advice do you give to an entrepreneur?
Listen, I think the advice that I would offer a young entrepreneur is back to the original statement I made earlier. Know who you're getting into business with. And I think John made a great point, right? You want to hire these employees because you need them, but you would be better off doing a huge interview that eliminates them as candidates, or giving them a trial period that if the two of you don't work, it's fine for them to go, because the people you do the business with, the people you're building the business with, you really are going to be needing them. You're going to lean on them. So really getting clear on who you're in business with and who you're hiring, I would say is a critical component. The second thing I would say is you need to understand what business you're in, right? A lot of people don't realize what business they're in. There's a great company and a great story about a company called Misfits. They recently sold, I think their recent value is $2 or $3 billion, and they only started in 2019. And what they realized was they were in the logistics business. Once they understood that they were in the logistics business, not in the fruit and vegetable business, their business exploded. Choose correctly who you go into business with, who you hire, and know what business you're actually in. And if you really look at those as your pillars, I think you're going to do extremely well.
I would just add two other things. Every business, there's typically two things that are going to cost them the most throughout. And it just depends on the size, what it's going to be. It's taxes and employees. So if I was a new entrepreneur today, and I know everything that I know from practicing law for 25 years, I would start a business, well, first of all, that I enjoy, but second of all, that has some tax benefits to it, like real estate, the oil, gas. I mean, there's lots of stuff, right? But the second thing is a business that isn't employee heavy. If you're in California, somewhere else, maybe it would be some other advice. But most of the problems, whether it be expense, whether it be lawsuits, whatever, it's all employee generated, or a lot of it is employee generated. It's wise to start a business that's employee heavy. That would be my advice. That's why I love AI so much.
Well, John, it looks like it's pretty much a wrap.
Well, anyway, in closing, thanks again for those that are watching this episode. Marvin, I appreciate you coming on. We talk pretty much weekly anyway, and I appreciate you. I know that you're a busy man. And Steve, thank you as always for keeping the conversation going, because that's not my skill set. And until next time, everybody, be productive.
And don't forget, subscribe. Listen to us every other week, and go check out Marvin. Look him up. He's got some good write-ups on the internet. Don't forget John. Law information. Go to John Fagerholm. Anyway, thank you from the crew at Lawsuits and Lessons, and you all have a good week.